Hey guys, so this is a video that's been a little while in the making. Now, I know people wanted me to do an updated top 3 of each faction video, and the thing is, now that the game has changed in a way that we don't have auras anymore, there's basically no need for that video. And ranking top 10 heroes is pretty much impossible. What I'm going to do instead is highlight my tier list, which you can see here. I'm going to explain how to use it, probably some of the more commonly asked questions, and hopefully answer most of the questions you may have in how to use this and how to get the most out of this, why I sorted it the way I did, why I split it the way I did, in a way that can help everybody from newbies to totally advanced players. So I want to start by saying that because of the way the game is right now, there is no single best hero, there's no single best team, there's no one meta team that destroys everybody 100%. It does not exist. You may destroy everybody on your server, but when you come down to it and you play on your cluster and honor, there's going to be always different variants, there's counters to everything, and it's a very, very open meta right now. And it's very interesting because it's very hard to explain how to build the best team against other people, because that entirely depends on your opponents now, rather than just having the single best team. So let's get into this tier list. What I started with is, so I made a cover page. The reason for that is I have a whole bunch of explanatory notes on the top of each, and nobody ever reads them. So this video is going to be a lot of going through what the notes are, what they mean, and stuff that probably anybody that looked at this tier list never bothered to even look at before and ended up asking questions about it. So step one, there are 3 tier lists in this. This is an all-inclusive. One is going to be general purpose. It includes a hero's overall usefulness for PvE, that's Den, Planet Trial, bosses, and stuff like that, and also low-level PvP. So if you have these heroes, you'll do really good in PvE and you'll do okay in PvP. So they're recommended heroes to build that are all-purpose heroes. List 2 is PvP-centric. This is very specific for people that are really, really pushing in PvP, in Honor, in Arena, in whatever, and these are the most common heroes that you'll see at the highest end. Now there's a difference in this because heroes that may be very strong for PvE is very different than being good against PvP, where you have an entirely different set of variables to work against. So the heroes will be ranked very differently depending on which list they're on. The third list is for peaks, and this is more of a general guideline, because building a team around one hero isn't really as good as picking 6 heroes that work pretty good together. So it's kind of going to depend on your play style, but it's a general guideline rather than a totally follow this and nothing else list. So let's get into the general list. By that I mean let's get into the tips. So the first question that obviously the newest players have is, what does T4 even mean? Now T4 is for heroes that go beyond 10 star. It's short for talent, because above 10 stars, every single star that you, or every talent that you go up, you get to pick one of a set of 2 or 3 talents. So the higher you are, the more talents you have, and it goes up to level 300. The one thing that I do want to highlight is that if you do not see a hero on this list, it means that they don't go to T4, and it means that necessarily they are trash and not really worth putting effort into. Examples would be like Lionheart, who doesn't go beyond 9 stars. If you don't see your hero on this list at all, it means that you really shouldn't be working on building. So starting here, the way that I grouped it is S tier is basically they can always be used. They always have a use in any team. They will always be strong in terms of support, healing, damage, and they'll be good on pretty much any team you put them on. An example of this is clearly Skuld, who excels in everything. She gives you team buffs, she gives you revive, she gives you healing, and all sorts of stuff. So the way that this works, S is fits in everything. A is they fit in most teams, but they need at least a little bit of support. They're not super strong on their own without maybe Skuld or maybe a good combo hero with them. B tier is you can use them. If you really know how to build teams, you can use B tier, but for the most part, if you're just trying to slap together a strong team, you might want to avoid this tier entirely. And the same for C tier. Just completely skip them unless you really have a good reason for making them. Roles, I've defined them as basically damage, support, tank, and then burst is a subcategory of damage, whereas they tend to do a whole lot of damage at once rather than slow damage over many turns. Burst is pretty much where the core of the game is right now, is getting through their defense and healing and landing those kills before they can heal it back up or kill you back. The runes and artifacts are for the known most useful version of a hero. Rather than being the best for everyone, they are, if you don't want to think about it, these are kind of the runes you should settle on. Now, I do have Ragnarok and Tears of the Goddess listed most of the time because those are, for the most part, the strongest single artifacts that you can equip in terms of what they do. However, if you don't have them, here are your alternatives. So Ragnarok is better than Gaia Bolga, is better than the faction damage, is better than Eye of Heaven and Dragon Blood. So if you don't have any of Ragnarok or Gaia Bolga, you can always drop down to one of these, Eye of Heaven, or the other versions such as Blood Metal or Ancient Vows, or whichever one of those. Something like that. Ancient Vows might be the speed one, I forget. And Tears of the Goddess, Star Shards does 90% of what Tears of the Goddess does. It's nice to have Tears of the Goddess, but considering how much it costs to get one, and Star Shards is free with Moonstones, you don't ever need to force your way into getting multiple Tears of the Goddess. The exception is going for Mythic Artifact, but that's not something I want to go into because if you're spending the money to get that, then you probably know what you're doing with them. Next is Priority. Now, you'll find heroes that work really good as first T4. You'll see a lot of maybe advice from people saying, oh, I have Reaper. Reaper's amazing early on. Everybody should build him. And that's true, but then he gets very weak later on. So I have recommendations for good heroes to build in order. And I also have recommendations for the order that you should build them. Because let's say your very first one is Vivienne or something. She's super good in defense, but she does no damage. So having her as your first T4 pretty much ensures that you will never win a single fight on offense ever. So something to think about is if you're just blindly looking to build a team and you want heroes to focus on, this column is kind of where you want to go. And here is a sample of a team composition: 1 tank, 1 to 3 damage, 2 to 4 support. Build it as you need, build it based on what you've got, and try and fine tune it from there. There really isn't a single best, like I said earlier, so build what you got. So all of these talents and all of these gears, they're kind of a general suggestion, but in all cases, everything can be tweaked depending on exactly what you need. Like I may say Skuld here wants attack and energy, but if she's dying too fast every single time, you might try to change something to HP or something like that. Like change her T1 to HP. It all depends on your opponents. So I'm not going to go into the specific heroes on this list because this list is in flux. By the time you watch this, everything may or may not have changed, but it's just a general guideline. And I do have a small set of notes for each hero that's maybe a little bit of a clarification as to why they are where they are, what they offer, and all of that. I do apologize because this list doesn't look the best in dark mode, but I didn't want to really mess with the colors. Alright, so next I'm going to go into the PvP list. So again, this is for high-end, very specific PvP oriented. There are heroes that do very good here that may not do good at all in PvE. An example of that would be like Hodor or something. So my tier listing is a little bit different here. So in this case, S fits into pretty much all PvP teams, can have a place for people that are just, again, slapping together good heroes without really tuning their strategy, without changing their hero levels, without changing their speeds and everything to make them work together the best they can. If you're just trying to throw the 6 best heroes you got, then this S tier is where you want to stay. A tier is, they have their uses, but they also have enough counters that you don't want to rely on them as the core of your team. B tier is the one that's the trickiest. These are heroes that on their own are not very good. Once you find a really good set of synergy for them, such as Chesia and Mulan, Hodor and Aegina, Lindbergh and Wolf Rider, stuff like that, once you find combos that work like that, then it draws them up, and then all of a sudden your generic burst team can add some of these heroes in them because they work so well together. B tier is where if you feel like you're confident enough in the game to start experimenting, these are the heroes that are below the top tier and just strong enough to be very usable if you know what you're doing. One major example of this would again be Hodor, because he's one of the hardest to use most effectively. He's too fast to work with some of the best teammates he has, so you kind of want to play with his speed and such, so on and so forth. He's very good on his own, but to get, again, the most you can get out of him, you have to play with a lot of factors with him. So his artifact, his levels, his teammates' levels, and all of that, everything needs to be a factor. So that is what raises his possible teammates out from B to S or something, depending on how you're using them. C tier is pretty much trash tier. It's bad in most situations. Maybe if you find a really specific use for a hero, you can draw them out of C tier. But I'm going to tell you, you will not be able to maximize as easily as everyone else that's just throwing together S tier. The most common example of that is pretty much Brynhild right now, who is single-handedly destroying things, but it can be countered if you can stop her with energy denial and stuff like that. Again, if you pay attention to what the tiers mean when you're choosing your heroes, it should be enough for you to make the team you want. And last is going to be the peaks tier list. Like I said, this is just a general summary of what's good. It's not an end-all, be-all. Some heroes work better for some people than others. Some heroes are so luck-heavy that some people like to rely on that. I generally don't, but do what works best for you. So this is very constantly kept up to date as the game changes, as we learn more about heroes and as they work together, how they work together, and so on and so forth. As a summary, this tier list can be found in almost every video description down below. It will be constantly updated as long as I'm playing the game. I've been asked for things like a skin tier list, which I think is a terrible idea because none of the skins are good enough to warrant really prioritizing over others. So that's pretty much it. Again, this is a summary of what this tier list is. I'm not going into specifically who is the strongest and whatnot because that doesn't exist at this time, but I hope that using this tier list, it will help you make informed decisions on who to level and how to build teams, and hopefully answers most of the most basic questions about, do I want this hero, is he good, and what is the best artifact for him? Those questions come a lot, and pretty much all beginner questions should be answerable with this list. So feel free to send this to your friends and have them use it too if they need help with the game. Alright, so that should be all for me this time. See you guys next time.